Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair aboard the Guardian, watching the stars drift by through the main view screen. The exploration mission had been routine so far. 3 weeks of mapping empty star systems and cataloging dead planets. Nothing exciting, nothing dangerous, just the way he liked it. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of the ship's engines. His crew worked at their stations with practiced efficiency. Lisa Park monitored communications from her position near the back of the bridge. Commander Alex Turner reviewed navigation charts at the tactical station. Everything was normal until the alarm started beeping. "Captain," Lisa called out, her voice tight with concern, "I'm picking up a distress signal." Morrison straightened in his chair. "Where's it coming from?" Lisa's fingers flew over her console as she worked to trace the signal. "It's very weak, sir. The transmission is breaking up badly. I can barely make it out. Can you clean it up?" "I'm trying, but it's fragmenting. The signal is old, maybe weeks or months. It's been bouncing around space for a long time." Lisa paused, concentrating on her instruments. "Wait, I'm getting something. Coordinates. They're pointing to the Kepler system." Morrison looked at Turner. "How far?" Turner checked his charts. 2 days at maximum warp. "Sir, but that system is supposed to be empty. The surveys show no habitable worlds." "Maybe the surveys were wrong." Morrison made his decision quickly. "Lisa, can you get any more information from that signal?" "Still working on it, Captain. The message keeps repeating the same coordinates over and over. But there's something else. The signal isn't human." The bridge fell silent. First contact with alien species was rare, and most encounters were handled by specialized diplomatic ships. An exploration vessel like the Guardian wasn't equipped for formal contact protocols. "Are you certain?" Morrison asked. Double quotes, "Yes, sir. The signal structure is completely different from anything in our databases. This is definitely alien technology." Morrison stood up and walked to Lisa's station. On her screen, waves of static occasionally resolved into brief bursts of organized data, even to his untrained eye. The patterns looked strange and foreign. "How long until we reach those coordinates?" he asked Turner. 47 hours at our current speed." Morrison nodded. "Set course for the Kepler system and send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we've received an alien distress signal and are investigating." The next 2 days passed slowly. The crew prepared for whatever they might find. Dr. Susan Hayes, the ship's medical officer, reviewed what little information they had about alien biology. The ship's small security team checked their equipment. Everyone tried to guess what they would discover. When the Guardian dropped out of warp at the edge of the Kepler system, the crew gathered on the bridge to see what awaited them. The main screen showed a yellow star with several planets orbiting around it. The third planet from the sun glowed with a sickly green atmosphere. "That's where the signal is coming from," Lisa reported. "Viridian Prime. The planet is barely habitable. Thin atmosphere, extreme temperature variations, and the surface is mostly desert." "Any signs of life?" Morrison asked. Turner ran a detailed scan. "I'm reading massive energy signatures on the surface, thousands of them, clustered together in what looks like a large settlement. And Captain, there are ships in orbit, dozens of them, but they're all dead. No power, no life support." Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. "How many life signs on the planet?" "Over 50,000, sir. They're concentrated in a small area near the equator." The numbers were staggering. 50,000 beings stranded on a dying world with no way to escape. Morrison had to make a choice. His ship wasn't designed for large-scale rescue operations, and they had no idea what species they were dealing with or why they were stranded. "Take us into orbit," he ordered, "but keep our shields up and weapons ready." As the Guardian approached the situation became clearer. The surface was dotted with crude shelters and makeshift structures. Smoke rose from countless small fires. The dead ships in orbit were clearly alien in design, their hulls scorched and broken. "My God," Dr. Hayes whispered as she studied the readings. "Those people down there are dying. I'm reading signs of malnutrition, disease, and exposure. They need help immediately." Morrison studied the tactical display. The alien ships showed signs of battle damage, but there were no enemy vessels in the area. Whatever had happened here was over, leaving only survivors struggling to stay alive. "Prepare a shuttle," he told Turner. "Small team only. You, Dr. Hayes, and to security officers. I want to know what happened here and who these people are." "Sir, are you sure about this?" "We don't know anything about their culture or intentions," Morrison looked at the screen again, watching the faint smoke signals rising from the planet's surface. 50,000 beings were down there, waiting for help that might never come. "They sent a distress signal," he said quietly. "That means they want to be rescued. We can't just leave them to die." An hour later, the shuttle descended through Viridian Prime's thin atmosphere. The landing site was a flat area near the largest concentration of shelters. As they touched down, hundreds of alien beings emerged from their crude dwellings to watch the new rivals. Morrison stayed on the ship, monitoring the mission from the bridge. Through the shuttle's cameras, he got his first clear look at the stranded aliens. They were tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large eyes. Their clothes were torn and dirty, and many appeared weak from hunger. "Captain," Turner's voice came through the communication system, "you need to see this. These people have been abandoned. They're refugees, and someone left them here to die." The truth was even worse than Morrison had imagined. As his team made contact with the alien survivors, a story of betrayal and abandonment began to emerge. The refugees had trusted a powerful alliance to relocate them to safety, only to be dumped on this hostile world and forgotten. Morrison realized he was facing a decision that would change everything. These people needed help that only humans could provide, but getting involved might put his crew and his entire species at risk. The clock was ticking, and 50,000 lives hung in the balance. The message from Captain Morrison reached Earth Command 12 hours later. Admiral Grace Miller read the report 3 times before she fully understood what her exploration ship had discovered. 50,000 alien refugees abandoned on a dying world. The situation was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. Miller called an emergency meeting with her senior staff. The conference room filled quickly as officers hurried in from across the base. Everyone looked worried. First contact situations were always delicate, but this one involved a massive humanitarian crisis. "What do we know about these aliens?" asked Colonel Frank Davis, head of fleet operations. "They're called the Kalari," Miller replied, consulting Morrison's latest report. "They were evacuated from their home system when their sun started to collapse. The Galactic Coalition promised to relocate them to a safe world, but instead dumped them on this planet and left them there." The room fell silent. Everyone knew about the Galactic Coalition. It was a powerful alliance of advanced alien species that controlled most of the galaxy. Humanity had been trying to establish good relations with them for years, but progress was slow. "How long have they been stranded?" asked Dr. Nathan Clark, Earth's leading expert on alien biology. "Over 2 years. Many have already died from starvation and disease." Dr. Hayes reports that their medical situation is critical. Without immediate help, thousands more will die within weeks. Dr. Clark leaned forward in his chair. "Admiral, with respect, this is a clear humanitarian emergency. These people are dying from preventable causes. Our medical technology could save their lives." "It's not that simple," Miller replied. "We have no authority to intervene in coalition affairs. Officially, this is none of our business." Captain Helen Fox, commander of the medical ship's Mercy, spoke up. "Admiral, are we really going to let 50,000 beings die because of politics?" Before Miller could answer, her aide entered the room. "Admiral, I have Ambassador Vextar from the Coalition on the line. He wants to speak with you immediately." Miller felt her stomach sink. The Coalition already knew about Morrison's discovery. She walked to the communications panel and activated the screen. The alien ambassador appeared, his reptilian features showing clear displeasure. "Admiral Miller," Vextar said in his cold, precise voice, "I understand one of your ships has entered the Kepler system without authorization. Ambassador, we were responding to a distress signal. Our ship discovered refugees in need of medical assistance. The situation in that system is a coalition internal matter. Your presence there is inappropriate and unwelcome. I suggest you recall your ship immediately." Miller felt anger rising in her chest. Ambassador, those people are dying. Surely the coalition doesn't object to humanitarian aid? The Kalari situation has been resolved according to coalition policy. No further intervention is required or desired. Any attempt by human forces to interfere will be viewed as a hostile act. The screen went dark. Miller stared at the blank display, processing what she had just heard. The coalition considered abandoning 50,000 refugees to be a resolution. They were willing to threaten humanity to prevent rescue efforts. Admiral, Dr. Clark said quietly, "We can't let this stand. These people trusted the coalition to save them, and they were betrayed. We might be their only hope." Miller knew he was right, but the political implications were enormous. Defying the coalition could damage humanity's position in galactic politics for generations. But allowing mass death when they had the power to prevent it was unthinkable. "Get me President Hayes on the line," she ordered. 20 minutes later, Miller was in a secure video conference with President Robert Hayes and the United Earth Council. The president looked tired. He had been dealing with coalition politics for months, trying to secure better trade agreements and diplomatic recognition. "Admiral, I've read Morrison's report. The situation is tragic, but we have to consider the bigger picture. Humanity's future in the galaxy depends on maintaining good relations with the coalition, Mr. President," Miller replied, with respect. "What kind of future are we building if we ignore genocide when it's convenient?" The word genocide hung in the air like a physical presence. Several council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Dr. Emily Reed, the council's humanitarian affairs expert, was the first to speak. "The president is right about the political risks, but we also have to consider our moral obligations. These refugees are dying because they trusted the wrong people. Don't we have a duty to help them?" "The coalition has made their position clear," said Foreign Minister Carl Brooks. "They view any intervention as hostile action. We could be looking at economic sanctions or even military confrontation. They abandoned 50,000 people to die." Dr. Clark said over the communication link from Earth Command. "What does that tell us about their character? Are these really the allies we want?" President Hayes rubbed his temples. The decision before him would define humanity's role in the galaxy for years to come. Stand with the powerful coalition and ignore suffering, or risk everything to save strangers they had never met. "How many ships would we need for a rescue operation?" he asked Miller. "Morrison's ship alone can't handle 50,000 refugees. We'd need at least 3 vessels. The medical ship Mercy, the supply ship Providence, and an escort for protection. And the risks, the coalition has patrol ships in nearby systems. They've made it clear they'll use force to stop us. We could be looking at armed confrontation." The council debated for 2 hours. Some members argued for caution and diplomatic solutions. Others insisted that humanity's moral credibility was at stake. The discussion grew heated as the political and ethical implications became clear. Finally, President Hayes called for a vote. The result was close, but decisive. By a margin of 8 to 5, the United Earth Council authorized a humanitarian mission to rescue the Kalari refugees. Admiral Miller, the president said formally, "You are authorized to dispatch a task force to the Kepler system. Your mission is to provide humanitarian aid and evacuation services to the stranded refugees. You will avoid conflict if possible, but you are authorized to defend yourselves if attacked." Miller felt a mixture of relief and fear. The mission was approved, but she knew the challenges ahead were enormous. The coalition would not give up easily, and her ships would be operating far from any support. "Mr. President, there's one more thing. Morrison should command this mission. He knows the situation better than anyone, and the Kalari trust him." Agreed. "Promote him to Commodore and give him whatever he needs." As the conference ended, Miller began planning the most dangerous mission in human history. 3 ships and their crews would risk everything to save people they had never met, defying the most powerful alliance in the galaxy. The next few days would determine whether humanity's compassion was stronger than galactic politics. Commodore Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UNS Guardian as his small fleet dropped out of warp near Viridian Prime. The medical ship Mercy and supply vessel Providence took positions on either side of his command ship, while the escort frigate Defender moved ahead to scout for threats. 3 days had passed since Earth Command approved the rescue mission, and every hour counted. Status report, Morrison ordered as his ships settled into formation. Captain Helen Fox's voice came through the communications system from the Mercy. Medical teams are ready for deployment. We've prepared treatment facilities for 500 patients. But if the situation is as bad as your initial reports suggest, we'll be overwhelmed quickly. Chief Supply Officer Den Murphy spoke. From the Providence, food, water, and emergency shelters are loaded and ready for distribution. We have enough supplies for 10,000 people for 1 month. But that won't last long with 50,000 refugees. Captain Chris Evans of the Defender added his report. Long-range sensors show no coalition ships in the immediate area, but we're detecting patrol routes in the outer system. They know we're here. Morrison nodded grimly. The coalition was watching, waiting to see what humanity would do. He turned to his communications officer. Lisa, open a channel to the planet. Let them know we're back with help. The response from the surface came immediately. The alien voice spoke through their translation computers, filled with desperate hope. Human ships, this is Zeph-Hyev. The Kalari people, many have died since you left. The sickness spreads faster now. Please, we need help immediately. Tell them we're coming down with medical teams and supplies. Morrison replied. He switched to the ship-wide communication system. All teams, prepare for immediate deployment. This is what we came here to do. Dr. Susan Hayes led the first medical team to the planet's surface. What she found was worse than anyone had imagined. The refugee camps had grown larger and more desperate since Morrison's first visit. Crude shelters made from salvaged metal and cloth stretched across the desert landscape. The smell of sickness and death hung heavy in the thin air. My God, Dr. Hayes whispered as she walked through the camps. Hundreds of Kalari lay on makeshift beds, their blue skin pale and their large eyes dim with fever. Children cried weakly. In their parents' arms, the healthy ones moved slowly, conserving their strength for survival. Dr. Patricia Lee, the Mercy's chief medical officer, set up a treatment station near the largest group of sick refugees. Her scanners immediately identified the problem. It's a bacterial infection. But it's unlike anything in our medical databases. The Kalari immune system can't fight it off. Can we treat it? Dr. Hayes asked. I think so, but we'll need to modify our antibiotics. Their biology is different from ours. Give me 6 hours to run tests and prepare the treatments. While the medical teams worked frantically to develop treatments, Chief Murphy organized the distribution of food and water. The Kalari were grateful beyond words for the basic supplies. Many had been surviving on contaminated water and scraps of food that barely kept them alive. The work continued through the day and into the night. Human crews worked alongside Kalari volunteers to set up temporary hospitals and distribution centers. Despite the language barriers and biological differences, cooperation came naturally. Suffering was universal, and so was the desire to help. Morrison remained on his ship, coordinating the relief efforts and watching for signs of coalition interference. His worst fears were realized when Lisa Park called out from her station. Commodore, I'm picking up ships dropping out of warp. 3 coalition vessels heading directly for us. Morrison felt his heart sink. The coalition had decided to stop the rescue mission by force. What type of ships? 2 frigates and a destroyer. They outgun us significantly. Captain Evans' voice came through the communications system. Commodore, coalition ships are demanding we withdraw immediately. They're giving us 1 hour to comply or face military action. Morrison had expected this moment, but he still felt the weight of the decision before him. 50,000 lives hung in the balance, but so did the safety of his own crews. If he refused to withdraw, people would die in the fighting that followed. Open a channel to the coalition commander, he ordered. The alien face that appeared on the screen was cold and reptilian, with yellow eyes that showed no emotion. Human commander, you are in violation of coalition space. You will cease your illegal operations and withdraw immediately. Commander, we are conducting humanitarian operations to save dying refugees. Surely the Coalition doesn't object to medical aid? The Kalari situation has been resolved according to Coalition policy. Your interference is unwelcome and unauthorized. You have 57 minutes to comply, and if we refuse, the alien's eyes narrowed. Then you will face the consequences of your actions. The channel closed, leaving Morrison alone with his thoughts. Around him, the bridge crew waited for orders. In the camps below, human medical teams worked to save Kalari lives on the other ships. His crews prepared for whatever came next. Morrison made his choice. All ships, this is the Commodore. We did not come here to start a war, but we will not abandon these people to die. Continue rescue operations. Defender, take position between the Coalition ships and the planet. If they want to stop us, they'll have to go through you first. Captain Evans' response was immediate. Understood, sir. Defender moving to intercept. The next 40 minutes passed in tense silence. Human medical teams continued their work on the planet, while the Defender faced off against 3 Coalition warships. Morrison watched the tactical display, knowing that at any moment the shooting could start. Dr. Hayes' voice broke the silence. Commodore, we've developed treatments for the infection. We're saving lives down here, but we need more time. How much time? Days, maybe weeks. There are too many sick people to treat quickly. Morrison looked at the tactical display again. The Coalition ships were moving closer, their weapons powered and ready. In a few minutes, they would be in optimal firing position. All medical teams, prepare for immediate evacuation if necessary, he ordered, but continue treatment operations until the last possible moment. The Coalition commander's voice filled the bridge. Human ships, your time has expired. Withdraw now or we will open fire. Morrison stood up slowly, feeling the eyes of his bridge crew upon him. Everything humanity had worked for in galactic politics was at risk, but so were 50,000 innocent lives. Coalition ships, this is Commodore Morrison of the United Earth Fleet. We will not withdraw while people are dying. If you want to stop us, you'll have to shoot first. The communication channel went silent. On his tactical display, Morrison watched as the Coalition ships moved into attack formation. The moment of truth had arrived, and there was no turning back. The first shots came without warning. Blue energy beams from the Coalition destroyers struck the Defender's shields, lighting up space with brilliant flashes. Captain Chris Evans immediately returned fire, his ship's weapons targeting the nearest Coalition frigate. All ships, battle stations, Morrison ordered from the Guardian's bridge. Medical teams on the surface, prepare for emergency evacuation if needed. The space battle was fierce but brief. The Defender was smaller and faster than the Coalition ships, but she was heavily outnumbered. Evans fought brilliantly, using hit-and-run tactics to avoid the enemy's heaviest weapons. His ship danced between asteroids and debris, striking hard and moving away before the Coalition could focus their fire, but the odds were against him. A lucky shot from the destroyer punched through the Defender's shields and tore a hole in her hull. Atmosphere vented into space as emergency alarms sounded. Throughout the ship, Defender is taking heavy damage. Lisa Park reported from her communications station. They're requesting immediate assistance. Morrison watched helplessly as his escort ship fought for survival. The Guardian and her sister ships were not warships. They carried only light defensive weapons, no match for Coalition military vessels. Then something unexpected happened. The Coalition ships suddenly stopped firing and began to retreat. Their formation broke apart as they moved away from the human fleet at maximum speed. What's happening? Morrison asked, confused by the sudden change. Turner checked his sensors. Carefully, sir. I'm reading massive energy signatures approaching from the edge of the system. Multiple ships, coming in fast. The tactical display lit up with new contacts. A full fleet of ships was dropping out of warp space near Viridian Prime. Morrison counted at least 20 vessels, including several massive cruisers that dwarfed anything in the human fleet. Commodore, Lisa called out excitedly. I'm receiving a transmission from the approaching fleet. They're identifying themselves as the Combined Free Worlds Alliance. Morrison had heard of the Alliance. It was a loose confederation of smaller species that had broken away from Coalition control. Over the past few years, they were not as powerful as the Coalition, but they were numerous and growing stronger. The lead ship of the Alliance fleet opened. Communications. The face that appeared on Morrison's screen was humanoid but covered in silver fur, with large black eyes that showed both intelligence and determination. Human Commander. This is Admiral Kethra of the Centauri Republic. We have come to assist your humanitarian mission. Morrison could hardly believe what he was hearing. Admiral, we appreciate any help, but this could mean war with the Coalition. Commander, the Coalition has ruled through fear and abandonment for too long. Your people have shown that some species still believe in doing what is right, regardless of the cost. We stand with you. More ships continue to arrive. The Andorian Republic sent a squadron of fast cruisers. The Tau Ceti Federation contributed medical ships loaded with supplies. Even species Morrison had never heard of sent vessels to support the rescue mission. Within hours, the space around Viridian Prime was filled with ships from dozens of different worlds. The Coalition fleet, faced with overwhelming opposition, withdrew to the outer system and waited for reinforcements on the planet's surface. The rescue operation transformed into something much larger. Alliance medical teams joined the humans in treating sick Kalari refugees. Engineers from multiple species worked together to improve the temporary shelters and set up better sanitation systems. Dr. Hayes found herself working alongside alien doctors she had only read about in textbooks. Despite the language barriers and different medical techniques, they shared a common purpose. Saving lives required no translation. The infection rate is dropping. Dr. Lee reported after 3 days of intensive treatment, we're finally getting ahead of the disease, but we still need to evacuate these people to better facilities. Chief Navigator Paul Davis had been working with Alliance planners to identify suitable worlds for Kalari resettlement. We found 6 planets that could support Kalari colonies. He told Morrison, 3 are in human space and 3 are controlled by Alliance members. The evacuation began immediately. Transport ships from across the Alliance arrived to carry refugees to their new homes. The Kalari, who had been abandoned and left to die, now had more potential homes than they could use. HFY, the Kalari leader, spoke to Morrison through their translation system. Human Commander, we do not understand why you risked so much for strangers. Your people had no obligation to help us. Morrison thought carefully before answering. My people believe that when someone is in trouble, you help them if you can. It doesn't matter if they're strangers or what species they are. It's just the right thing to do. The alien's large eyes seemed to brighten. This concept of helping without obligation is foreign to us, but we are grateful beyond words. The Kalari people will remember this kindness for all generations. As the evacuation continued, Morrison received reports from across the Alliance fleet. The operation was proceeding smoothly, but everyone knew the Coalition would not give up easily. Intelligence reports indicated that a massive Coalition armada was assembling in nearby systems. They're bringing everything they have, Captain Fox reported from the Mercy. Over 100 ships, including their most powerful battleships. They mean to crush this rebellion before it spreads. Morrison understood the implications. The rescue of the Kalari had become the spark that ignited a galactic civil war. Species that had suffered under Coalition rule for decades were finally willing to fight back. Inspired by humanity's willingness to risk everything for refugees they barely knew, Admiral Miller's voice came through on a priority communication. Channel from Earth, Morrison, you've done something incredible. Half the galaxy is talking about what happened at Viridian Prime, but intelligence reports suggest the Coalition is planning a massive retaliation. How long do we have? Morrison asked. Maybe a week before their fleet arrives. You need to get those refugees evacuated and get out of there. Morrison looked at the tactical display showing hundreds of ships from dozens of species working together to save Kalari lives. The rescue mission had become something much larger than anyone had imagined. It had become a symbol of hope for oppressed peoples throughout the galaxy. But symbols were fragile things, and the Coalition was coming with enough firepower to destroy them all. The final test was still ahead, and Morrison wondered if their alliance of conscience would be strong enough to survive the storm that was coming. The Coalition armada arrived like a dark storm across the stars. Over 100 warships dropped out of warp space at the edge of the Kepler system, their hulls gleaming with weapons and armor. Morrison had never seen so much concentrated firepower. In one place, Fleet Commander Crathen led the Coalition forces from his massive flagship, a ship 3 times larger than anything in the human fleet. His cold voice filled the communication channels as he broadcast his demands to every ship in the system. Rebellious species of the system, you have violated Coalition law and defied legitimate authority. Surrender immediately and face judgment, or be destroyed where you stand. Morrison stood on the bridge of the Guardian, watching the enemy fleet advance in perfect formation. Around him, the alliance of free worlds prepared for the fight of their lives. Ships from 30 different species formed defensive lines around the last transport vessels carrying Kalari refugees to safety. Status of the evacuation? Morrison asked Captain Fox. Final transport ships are loading now, she replied from the Mercy. We've saved over 45,000 Kalari, but 5,000 are still on the surface waiting for pickup. Morrison felt the weight of those numbers. They had come so close to saving everyone. 5,000 lives still hung in the balance, and the Coalition fleet was moving to attack positions. Admiral Kethra's silver-furred face appeared on Morrison's communication screen. Human Commander, my ships are ready to fight, but we are still outnumbered 2 to 1. This will not be an easy battle. Admiral, we knew the odds when we started this mission. Those refugees down there are depending on us. We can't let them down now. The space between the 2 fleets crackled with tension. Morrison could see weapons charging and shields powering up across both formations. In minutes, the shooting would start and many good people would die. Then something unexpected happened. New contacts appeared on the tactical display. More ships were arriving, but these were not Coalition reinforcements. Commodore Lisa Park called out from her station. I'm receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. Ships are coming from everywhere. The Vegan Trading Consortium, the Rigel Free Traders, even some neutral species we've never heard of. The space around Viridian Prime filled with vessels of every size and design. Cargo ships, passenger liners, mining vessels, and exploration craft joined the military fleet. Most were lightly armed or carried no weapons at all, but they came anyway. Morrison watched in amazement as the ragtag fleet took positions alongside the human and Alliance warships. A passenger liner from the Procyon system moved between the Guardian and the Coalition fleet. A mining ship from the asteroid belt positioned itself to protect the last transport vessels. Why are they here? Turner asked quietly. The answer came from dozens of species at once. Ship captains from across the galaxy opened communication channels to explain their presence. We heard what the humans did for the Kalari refugees, said the captain of a Centauri cargo vessel. We wanted to help. The Coalition abandoned those people to die, added the commander of a vegan passenger ship. We cannot let that stand. Our species was once refugees too, transmitted the captain of an Andorian mining ship. We remember what it feels like to be forgotten. Morrison realized that news of the rescue mission had spread across the galaxy faster than anyone had imagined. The story of humanity's willingness to risk everything for strangers had touched something deep in the hearts of countless species. Fleet Commander Crathen's voice cut through the chaos of transmissions. Pathetic civilian vessels will not save you from Coalition justice. All ships will withdraw immediately or face destruction. Admiral Kethra responded for the entire Alliance. Commander, we will not withdraw while innocent people need protection. If you want to destroy us, you will have to destroy them all. The Coalition commander fell silent as he studied his tactical displays. His fleet still had superior firepower, but they now faced over 300 ships from across the galaxy. Destroying them all would mean massacre on an unprecedented scale. Morrison seized the moment. Commander Crathen, the galaxy is watching. Every species that has ever suffered under Coalition rule is here today. Are you really prepared to slaughter civilians to maintain your authority? Long minutes passed without response. The Coalition fleet held position, weapons ready, but not firing. Morrison could imagine the debates taking place on the enemy flagship as their commanders faced an impossible choice. Finally, Crathen spoke again, his voice tight with controlled anger. "This matter is not finished. The Coalition will remember this day, and those who participated in this rebellion." The Coalition fleet began to withdraw, moving slowly back toward the edge of the system. They had been defeated not by superior firepower, but by the moral weight of 300 species standing together for what was right. Cheers erupted across the Alliance fleet as the enemy ships disappeared into warp space. The impossible had happened. A coalition of conscience had faced down the galaxy's greatest military power and won. On the planet's surface, the last Kalari refugees boarded transport ships that would carry them to new homes across the galaxy. They were no longer abandoned and forgotten. They were welcomed guests of dozens of worlds that had volunteered to help them rebuild their lives. 3 months later, Morrison stood on the observation deck of New Kalari, the first permanent Kalari colony established in human space. The settlement was thriving, with refugee families building new homes and starting new lives far from the dying world. Where they had been abandoned, Zephi joined him at the viewing window, his large eyes bright with hope for the first time in years. "Human Commander, our children will grow up free because of what you and your people did. How do we repay such a debt?" Morrison smiled as he watched Kalari children playing in the settlement's central square. "You don't repay it, you remember it, and someday when you find someone else who needs help, you do the same thing we did." The alien leader nodded slowly. "This lesson we will teach to all our children and their children after them." As Morrison prepared to return to Earth, he received word that delegations from over 50 species were requesting meetings with human representatives. They wanted to discuss forming a new kind of alliance, one based on mutual aid and protection of the innocent rather than political power. The rescue of the Kalari had changed everything. Humanity had stepped in when others were left to die, and in doing so, they had shown the galaxy that there was another way to live among the stars, a way based on compassion instead of conquest, cooperation instead of domination. The age of the Coalition was ending, and a new chapter in galactic history was beginning. It would be written by species who believed that every life had value, and that sometimes the right thing to do was also the hardest thing to do.